This episode of That's When I Knew the Podcast is brought to you by Jobski.io, the first career management platform built specifically for account executives. Whether you're active on the job search or just want to be aware of your market value, Jobski takes the stress out of career management by providing you with a unique seller profile that documents and showcases your skills as a seller. Head over to Jobski.io and apply for a private beta user account. Welcome back to another episode of That's What I Knew the Podcast, where real people have real conversations about the journey towards building a meaningful career in tech sales. I'm your host, Robert Creighton, and today we have a very special guest joining us on the podcast. Our guest today is an up-and-coming leader in the tech sales community, and he's currently working as an account executive over at Evenbound. But what I love most about our guest today is how consistent he is and the value that he brings with his personal brand on LinkedIn. And then more importantly, he's a huge proponent of putting your mental health and well-being first when it comes to basically building your career in this space. So without further ado, Nate Silvey, welcome to That's When I Knew the Podcast.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here. I'm excited to chop it up today.
Awesome. My guy Nate here is an account executive, like I mentioned. And just before chopping it up, prepping for the podcast, he was telling me he's on cloud nine. Just closed a huge deal. You want to tell us a little bit about how that, tell us a little bit about, just that deal and
yeah, man,
how you're feeling right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, first off, thank you. I mean, I'm grateful to be here. Like we were talking about previously, like some of the guests you've had and so on. It's an honor, man. So I'll say this: Q2 has been up and down. I mean, with the economy, with everything going on, it's been tough. Q1 and Q4 for us are hot. Q3 is like ramp up, and Q2 is typically slow. But yeah, man, we got the signature just now, and yesterday the verbal agreement, and just that feeling of like affirmation of your gifts, of your talents, that you're helping people in the world, that they believe in what you're sharing with them. And I had to throw on some music. I always get my 4 to 6 minutes of just celebrate for a minute after that close. I'm sure you know how that feels.
Absolutely.
That initial adrenaline rush that you get. So.
Absolutely. There's nothing like it. I tell people who aren't in sales, like, yes, sales can be stressful and, you can have those downs where you're just like, it's like, but when you close a deal, it's nothing like it. It's nothing like, that's the sad part of sales though. Like, it's like a roller coaster of emotions.
Emotional, damn it.
So, but it's nothing like that feeling. That's a fact. Well, let's dive into your background a little bit. You want to tell the people a little bit about your upbringing, just where you come from, and yeah, we'll start from there.
Yeah, man. So grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. If y'all are familiar with that, it's about 2 hours west of Detroit. It's a mid-market city, so I would say like 300,000 population, 200 maybe. But grew up on the southeast side of town, played a lot of sports growing up. I feel like competition really shaped the way I see the world. I grew up in a really diverse area of town. Actually, we live here right now. Like I moved back to right where I live, right where I grew up. But as I got older as a kid, we moved to kind of a wealthier spot of Grand Rapids, kind of a couple steps up from where I grew up at. And that really shaped kind of my view of the world, going from a really diverse, I think it's the most diverse district in the state, from there to predominantly white high school and college. So for me, I think my how I've been shaped, how I grew up, was really kind of that contrast of two stories, growing up in one spot playing a lot of sports and then going to the other, and just really learning to adapt with new people, new culture, and so on.
Well, that's awesome. Just reflecting, how do you feel that that's impacted your approach to your sales career? Do you see any correlation to your upbringing and having to adapt in different socioeconomic settings to now being in tech sales?
Yeah, I do. And the way that I do, I would say, is I know you mentioned this with the other podcast I watched.
Justin,
I think it was Justin Solis, but
yep.
Man, you just learned a code switch.
When you're young and black, you develop a knack for putting the world at ease. It's called code switching.
Man, you learn how to be all things to all people. And I mean, that has served me for some time. I think in the last maybe 6 months, I've kind of more said goodbye to that world and tried to just be myself in front of people. And you still have those skills and those attributes that you can lean on, but the reality is, like, I was called out in a ERG group I'm in, Black at Inbound, shout out, and they were just like, man, like, it doesn't have to serve you anymore, like that whole realm. So I found that, after 2020, people have become a little bit more accepting, it feels like. So really tried to step into that space. But I will say, like, it's never easy. It shapes us, though, I think, the world we live in and so on. I mean, tech is a way to earn a really good income. So you're around a lot of people who are high earners, which a lot of times they're white.
Yeah. No, that's a fact. And I think there's two. So I think there's a difference between like us being us, right? Like you like me, what type of music you like, how you talk, and like there's a difference between that, but also being aware of societal and cultural differences amongst other people, whether that be your peers, whether that be your customers. And so reflecting, I also have a similar kind of makeup. So like coming from a diverse background, now you're in predominantly white institutions and spaces. I also, that code switching is something that I suffer with initially. And so I try not to do that either today, but I think reflecting on how our upbringing really empowers us to a certain degree. Although I'm not code switching, I still, in my mind, am able to recognize and be curious about other people's backgrounds and cultures. And I think that actually serves us really well in sales because we're open to diversity. We know that we're different. And as we get older and as we get more established, like we're confident and we own our differences. And because we feel that way, it can allow us to appreciate and want to be curious about other people's differences as well. So that's something that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, man. It's almost like you're saying celebrate differences. Now that we're older, we're more mature. It's not just like stick it to the man. It's more of like, man, how can we partner with you in our differences to move the deal forward? I like that.
Absolutely. All right, what's your go-to sport like growing up? Was it baseball?
Yeah.
Or what? Was it?
So it was baseball. I would say this though, like I ran track and field and I played baseball. So like every spring and summer I was playing baseball, and then typically like fall and then the spring I would kind of do the dual sport thing. But honestly, you name a sport, I've played it. Like my parents were great at introducing everything and anything that I expressed interest in. So like when Tiger was on the TV, I had my golf like little set out, played. When I had 04, the Pistons won, which was a big deal. I remember staying up with my mom watching them win that series. So like had the mini hoop out, we'd go shoot hoops between quarters, like all that. So I like competition, man. If you name a sport right now, cornhole, whatever it needs to be, man, let's compete.
All right, cool. No, I love it. Same here. I think a lot of actually that confidence definitely translates into tech sales. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of competition because you want to be the number one person on your team. You want to beat your competitors, but there's also a sense of in that same realm, there's a sense of team as well because you want to, see your team succeed. You want to work well cross-functionally and just win as an organization. So I think that competition spirit, the competitive spirit, is definitely like translates into building a career in tech sales. Okay, so before we dive into your how you got into tech sales, like I am curious, what were the careers that you were exposed to growing up, and like did you want to be a professional athlete when you were growing up? Did you know that you wanted to be in tech sales? Like what were the careers that you were exposed to and expected of you just growing up?
Yeah. I'll say this, man. We're young, but we're old enough to know that tech sales wasn't really a thing. Like
Right.
my dad is in IT, so I grew up around like computers. He worked in SAP, which is an ERP system for like a pretty large company here. So I grew up with that. I always thought that was really cool. I really was interested in what he did. I never understood it, but I did like, I feel like computers and tech and that stuff always was an interest. My journey though, out of college, I majored in communications. Um, and then I started in like philanthropy, like did some nonprofit work through that, was doing like family foundation work with a few donors here. And then that kind of migrated into like community relations work with a bank. So like reaching out, scholarships, stuff like that, which was fun, but like it didn't hit. You know, I was still like just not fully sure it was what I wanted to do. From there, I went into real estate. I did marketing for a real estate company for a minute, did some sales support. And what was crazy, man, is like I had a desk at this real estate company where the window that I was next to overlooked like where the salespeople were. And we had a realtor, shout out Daryl Matthews, my guy. He walked us through a house buying process, and I started realizing that like every time they would leave the office and go get in their car and go visit, they were going to clients. They were actually in the world experiencing like new relationships, people, this and that. And I was just making graphics, right? And after a while, I was like, man, like there's got to be more than just sitting behind a desk. Like I need to be out in the world, meeting people, hearing their stories, you know, helping. So they offered me a job as a realtor. I turned that down just with like, I don't know, 100% commission. It was a little bit much to jump on board with, and applied for like a customer success position at Evenbound. Got that position. And then from there, like 8 months in, they were like, hey, you're really not like the best account manager, customer success. You keep upselling your accounts, but like the depth maybe it wasn't there. So they're like, we think you should, you know, look at sales. And that's kind of where that journey started. So long story short, I think it's more the variety than anything.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, you know, I haven't spoken to many people that transitioned from customer success, like post sales to to the sales side. Usually sellers are like, okay, I'm through with I'm through with cold calling and the prospecting. Like I'm about to just manage these accounts and upsell. They're happy already. So that's pretty cool. So how are you liking sales so far? Now that you've been in this side of the business.
I love it, man. I think knowing the people on our team who are in the CSMs, account managers, whatever, that post sales side, like I've sat in a few calls with them, and I'm like, I'm so glad I'm not. Just like the problems that they handle, the way they handle them, their ability to bring value with the product. I mean, it's crazy, man. I would say this, like in sales, you know your product, you know how typically it works with customers, and you might know a few use cases, but like you're not in the everyday post-sale where it's just like, hey, this is a common problem we face about 60 days in, right? So for me, I just wasn't great at maintaining a relationship post-sale. Like I don't know what it was. I was excited about the new ones. I was really good for 60 days. And then after that, I was kind of like just trying to upsell to get a little bump, you know? So
yeah, no, that's cool, man. I really appreciate this transparency there, and like you even sharing. I'm sure you have a different level of respect for the CSMs. In my journey in just being in AE roles, like I've worked you work very closely with the CSMs, the account managers, and man, like their job is not necessarily easy. Like although they don't have to prospect and cold call, like all we do really is sell the dream. Like we're selling the dream. And then like once a customer signs up, they have to like make sure that customer is experiencing the dream that's been sold. And that can be emotionally draining job, I would imagine. Like especially when you're dealing with unhappy customers, or the product isn't moving fast enough to meet the customer's expectations. So, I mean, let me ask you this. What advice would you give to account executives around best practices, or any tips, like things they should keep in mind when having a healthy working relationship with their post-sale counterparts?
That's a good question, man. So I'll say this, like there's got to be a consistent feedback or a loop of communication going on that's outside of a sales cadence. And the reason I say that, or let me explain that a little bit. So the CSMs are hearing post-sale what was promised, and typically if you're not on point with them, they're going to come back to you and say, like, you'll notice either customers are churning or they're facing a consistent problem, like, hey, everything that this person sells, we're noticing that like it was promised that within 6 months there'll be this many leads, or this supply chain issue will be solved, or this and that. And it's like usually, we'll talk about this in a minute, but like what got you here won't get you there, and it's always going to take more than you expect. So I would say like CSMs understand customers. That feedback loop needs to be there. Depending on your business, you might actually have to go back and sell new hubs, new features and add-ons too to that customer. So that's important to know. The other side would be like, I think every CSM needs to go through sales training, like an AE, because I think that I noticed like there's a need to ask more questions a lot. And if I stepped into an upselling role, I guarantee for a few weeks, like it's pretty clear the opportunities where we could cross sell, upsell in those, and make their life a little bit easier too. So I think it goes both ways.
Absolutely. And I think too, like, I've only worked at a handful of companies, but I think in certain cases, depending on the resources to a CSM, they might be experiencing a lot of like customer support requests. And so like their attention is pulled away from the upselling possibilities because they're now becoming like order takers, got to change. And so I do think that there's an opportunity for us as sales folks to really step in and help and kind of mentor them on like those opportunities to upsell. So I'm not going to sit there and say like, I think there's probably some account managers definitely that do this well, but just generally speaking in areas we can provide value, I would definitely agree with that. And also the feedback loop too. I think that's important.
Yeah. I will say this, man, like CSM, it's definitely sales. Like I still think it's sales. It's just different. And it's more of like what you would consider like a full cycle rep. It's like that plus, it's kind of more old school. Like if you were to work in manufacturing, like you win an account that accounts with you for 20 years, maybe if your machine gets implemented. And that's where it's like that sales rep is now the contact for the next 20 years. So like I think in tech sales, we kind of miss some of that of like really knowing the depth of a relationship past maybe like 1 or 2 years, I think there's a lot more to the table and so on. The AMs kind of make it a little bit cloudier for us, but I mean, they're definitely maintaining a lot of ARR or MRR, whatever you quantify.
That's a good point. You mentioned something a little bit earlier about what got you here won't get you there. I think that's what you said. You want to talk a little bit about that and, what you mean by that?
Yeah. So I love the quote. I think it's on Pusha T's album too as a sample, but it's yesterday's price is not today's price, right?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
And I think, that's like a proverb, man. I think that's been a really relevant theme in my life lately. Like the reality is if you are putting your head to the pavement, if you're working, if you're getting better and you're putting time in, you are increasing the value of yourself and you're also increasing the value of the people around you. So I think the reality is, man, like if you want to get somewhere, like we all have that goal, whether it's a sales manager or a VP of sales or start our own business, whatever that looks like. But the reality is like we see that goal, we create that system to get there. But the reality is the person that we'll be when we get there is going to be different than the person we are today. It's going to take more than we realize. So when I say what got you here won't get you there, it means like, man, like when a new lead comes in, let's say you do prospect, you get that first meeting. It's like, man, like they might sign in 30 days, but the reality is the person that you are when they sign is going to be more refined, a better seller, a better, listener, whatever. It's going to teach you something. So I think it's just trust in the process. It's just knowing that we're changing, we're malleable as people, and yeah.
Oh man, that's some good perspective there. That is like actually, yeah, I love that. Yesterday's price is not today's price. For the stock market, for the stocks right now, we need to think of another saying. Yesterday's prices
was great.
It was great. We need to go back to yesterday. No, that's some real wisdom right there. What are some things you recommend people do to really, and we'll say account executives, to really make sure that their stock is increasing, right, and not decreasing? Like, yeah, what are some things that you think people should be? How can people really, up level and?
I'll say, I've been honored that our company is putting us through training quite often. Like I think I've been through maybe three or four courses with like sales trainers and so on. Every time you kind of learn something, it's all within a similar vein, right? Like it was like gap selling and then Sandler and then a couple other training schools of thought, challenger sales, so on. Um, but I think like you have to have that professional development piece. Like we as sellers got to be open to investing in ourselves. Like I think about you think about like Masterclass, right? During COVID, Masterclass was hitting the ads so hard. Like you were seeing their ads everywhere. Like they had new courses, chefs, NBA, how to shoot a three, like all this. They were bringing on, like I think Stephen Curry's on there. They've got kind of anything for everyone. And the reality is like we need to be investing in ourselves. Take that commission check, take $300 out of it, and just go buy yourself a course and just keep investing in those little things that I think, that's going to serve you in the long run. Like I think about, we might talk about this in a little bit, but like OTE, quota, all that stuff, like it troubles me that you just become a manager when you hit a certain number at a lot of organizations. When the reality is managing people and leading people is a completely different skill than just being a top performer. So I think that's one thing, right? Like if you're looking for something to do, go learn how to lead people.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And in today's world, like there's so many different ways you can learn. Like you don't have to go to a university or a college to like learn
Right.
a new skill. Like literally, you want to learn how to code? There's freecodebootcamp.com or whatever it is. Like you want to learn how to sell, like YouTube, like there's boot camps, there's books. Like you can get a book on Amazon and have it delivered the next day. Like so
Yeah.
there's definitely different ways to learn. And you got podcasts too. Like so yeah, that's huge. Like you definitely got to continue to learn. And you gotta I like what you said too early on. Like we all know what we want to be, right? Like want to be a manager, want to be a VP of sales, want to be an owner, and like just reverse engineer. Like think about where you want to be, and then like I think that's really a whole concept around self-fulfilling prophecies and like speaking into the universe, those type of spiritual things. I mean, you just see what you want to become. Like think about what you want to be, and then I think the path will find itself to you as long as you have the drive and desire to pursue it. I think sometimes we make things so complicated. It's like,
Yeah, man. It's like be great today. That's all you need to focus on, and
yep.
take those quarterly sessions where you sit down and say, all right, by the time I'm 50, am I on the path that I want to be on? And if not, what do I need to change? But the reality is then you close that journal back up and you just get back into today.
Honestly, and I think that's one of the hard things for me is that like I'm so like I know where I want to be, but I'm just so like work and like doing what I got to do, and so I think I can do a better job personally of like taking a step back, reflecting, and saying, okay, am I on track? And like, am I going down the right? Am I going the right direction, or am I like going somewhere I shouldn't be going? Like, it's like so in Oakland, like in probably every city, every urban city, like you can drive down the wrong street, like.
Yeah, especially in Oakland, though. It's different.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. Some of the streets too are super, super narrow. Like, I just imagine it's in all urban cities, right? You can be just in the wrong place, trying to, on this goal. But yeah, I don't know if everybody will get that metaphor, but we'll see. Well, let's talk about some other things that I know you're super passionate about, right? Starting off with like mental health, work-life balance. You've posted a lot about this on your LinkedIn, and I also think it's a trending thing within the tech sales profession. I think a lot of sellers are speaking up about this. There's organizations that are popping up. So, like, yeah, what are your thoughts on that? And
yeah, man. I mean, I'll say this: like, I think what draws a lot of us to tech is like the whole you can work remote. You can kind of take a lot of places have unlimited vacation. You can kind of work from anywhere, right? You're seeing people move to Puerto Rico, people taking more trips. Now kind of in our space, I'm noticing a lot, and especially coders. I feel like sales is a little bit tough to go overseas, but still the opportunities there, the income is allowing that to happen too. But the problem with that I notice is like, because we're remote, like back in the day, a seller, let's say he had a 9 a.m. to 10:30. So he takes a 9 to 10:30. He's got to drive from 10:30 to 11:30, maybe back to the office. You might only book a meeting or two a day, right? So it's just different. Now we're starting to, like, some of my days are just, it's just back to back, right? And you're trying to hit your goal. You've got a quota set out, you know, the incentives if you hit that. So what you find is that we're starting to get into a pace that we can't sustain. I'm noticing more and more tech sellers like churn within 6 months in jobs. I'm noticing like VP of sales getting canned within a year and a half. And it's just this thing where I'm like, man, like there's got to be a better way for us to find balance and sustain and build, you know, a greater space for each other. So I think work-life balance in this space, man, I think you've really got to ask some good questions before you make a move to a new company. You've got to understand, is this quota attainable? And if it is, like, what is that actually taking from the sellers on the team? Like, are they putting in 9 p.m.? Like, yeah, there's some days I do, but the reality is, like, if you're on Friday night every week, you know, like trying to send one last email and try to get that deal closed, like that's going to burn you out eventually.
No, that's a good point. And I mean, to a certain degree, I think a lot of people are working at fast-growing tech startups, right? And so these companies have these outlandish goals to grow, and then that pressure just gets trickled down to, you know, all the way down to the bottom. And so I think you make a good point as far as like doing research when you're on their job search and like, hey, is this a company where I'm going to have to overexert myself in order to obtain the amount of income that I want to have? Or is this a place where I'll be able to make good money and also like be healthy, you know?
Yeah, I think, you know, on the personal side, I posted about this today, but it's like, it brings me back to competing, right? Let's say in hoops. If you ever watch, like, I was watching the Warriors game last night, and like, you know, between quarters, like, you know, in the NBA, they do like the load management thing. So like between quarters, or you might take a whole quarter off just so you can, you know, score 20 in the fourth or whatever. And you notice that like these players are just kicking it on the bench, right? They're just having a good time. They're not even, some of them throw the jersey off, right? Like they'll just have the just the hoodie on, whatever. Like Kyrie, I know he was hitting Ramadan, but like he was eating food, right? And you just notice that like we as sellers have to be like that. When we're on the court, we're competing. We're out there. We're doing what we're supposed to. We're putting in the work to be great, and we're performing. Now, when we get out of the game or on the bench, like relax. We got to really spend that time. It's like, you know, 8 to 5 or whatever you work. Let's go get it. Let's make it happen. But after that, man, 5:01, like if possible, go be with your family. Go take that time. Go to the park. Go for a walk. Take care of your body. Do the things you enjoy, because like life is short. Like we're all about to be hitting retirement before we know it, and like you can't get this time back. So
definitely, you're gonna retire before the age of what? Age of 30?
I'm tired, man. Let me get on my soapbox for a second. I'm tired of hearing that.
No, you don't like that either?
Be like, oh man, I'm gonna be retired by 30. I'm like, man, like. Really? Like I like working, you know, like
yeah.
Maybe not selling for the rest of my life, but like I want to do something, you know, like
yeah.
I guess reframe that for me if you think different. I'm open to being wrong, but
I think it would be nice to be able to retire by 30. I think about what that means. Like if you're able to retire by 30, that means you're rich. Like you got a lot of money saved up, or you just got such a lifestyle that, you know, you don't have a lot of expenses and you're able to do that. So that would be nice. I think people like us, I think, you know, you got to think what your purpose is in this world. And so your purpose you might retire by 30, but if you have a family, like, and you're just being a great father, not working, you're retired, but you're a great father, like that can be your work. That can be like your focus. And I think, or you can now say I'm retired and I'm going to start my own thing. But I'm retired from working for someone in some company, or I'm retired from having to work. I think that's really where I want to be. I want to be able to retire from having to work. Like, you know, I'm going to always do something because that's just in my blood. That's just in my nature. But yeah, right now, a lot of people have to work, and that's kind of unfortunate, you know?
Yeah. I think like, I mean, we're working on getting some Airbnbs going and like doing some of that stuff. It's a process, but like, getting some of the short-term rental game. Hopefully this market starts to plateau a little bit. But like, yeah, I see where that could be beneficial. Like you're doing maybe more of a vanity or like a heart pursuit than like selling a software that you didn't know like 6 months ago existed. I get that.
Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, but I also want to also acknowledge what you said about just unplugging after work. And I think, actually, I think working remotely makes that more difficult because the hours are a little bit blurred because you're just at home. You wake up, you know, you do your whatever routine, and now you're working. And then, like, when does work stop? Right. Back in the day, you know, a couple years ago, like when you're commuting into the office, at least there's like, okay, I'm leaving the office, close the laptop. Now it's just like I live at the office. Literally. Like, so I think your message more than ever is like really more important.
I know, man. I don't know how people who have like studio apartments do it. Like you got your desk right next to your bed. It's like, man, like I don't know. That's where, I totally agree, man. I think I mean, for me personally, like I got to do some amazing things this last year working remote. Like I ran my first marathon. My dad like ran the Chicago Marathon when I was a little kid. So like I ran Chicago because that was just something I wanted to do. I remember seeing him do it and was like, I want to do it. And I had no time to train for that. I was starting to put on some weight a few years ago just from like sitting around, right? Like you get home from work at 5:30 or whatever, and I was just gassed. Like you have a commute, you got traffic, you got all this and that, so you're just, you know, hitting up Popeyes, hitting up whatever, just fast food because you're just gassed, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I feel that. Remote work's been a blessing, but it's for sure it can make it real difficult too.
For that work-life balance. But you know what, I think, or I wonder if companies will start to invest in solutions or if there'll be startups that are trying to tackle that problem. Some companies, I don't know if you're aware of this, some companies, like, they'll pay you to go on vacation. So basically, they're trying to incentivize their people to take breaks, extended periods of time by, like, paying you. Like, hey, we'll give you $1,000 stipend to go on vacation somewhere for a week. And you still get paid unlimited PTO, but we're just going to give you money to go on vacation. And so I wonder if if companies start to think of like ways to do that on a daily basis for folks who have a hard time unplugging. And because people, I mean, we can all say like, hey, manage your own life. Like, hey, your life is your life. But at the end of the day, people need help. People have like are depressed people, and you know, if you got the resources and you're in a position to help, maybe we should think about how companies can help foster a better sense of work-life balance. Like I can even imagine there being an app on your computer, or it's like, you know how companies will have those, I forget what they're called, but like basically it's an app to manage all of the computer resources, like a one login type of thing, right? I can imagine where it's like, okay, we shut your work computer off at 5 p.m. Yeah. Then you can't work, you know, like stuff like that.
You can't hit quota either.
Yeah, you can't hit quota either. Yeah, but like it's one of those things where like the company would then have to say like we're prioritizing your well-being over your number, and like don't worry about OTE. Like you're going to be taken care of as long as you do the right thing and you work hard during the hours. Because like that's not really fair if they're saying OTE is this, but you got to work 80 hours a week. That's not really fair. So that really tells you right there that they don't prioritize your well-being. They prioritize a number. And so, yeah, you know, I just wonder what the trends will be moving forward, if there will be any,
I think that you ever heard of the Great Resignation right now that's happening? Like all the people leaving, and for the audience, you know, it's the people right now who are resigning from jobs that they're either unhappy about or want, you know, more pay, whatever. And they're moving around every year to get a 20, 30K pay raise every time, which, I mean, it's a move for a minute, right? But after a while, like, you get points where you're like, yo, you've had 8 jobs in the last 6 years. Like, is there a point where it becomes detrimental to, like, a hiring manager of being like, hey, I'm noticing this trend. Are we just going to be on that trend? So I'll say this. I think that eventually companies, they're going to have to figure out this hiring thing, because I'm noticing, like, mean, my DMs recruiters right now are like desperate for candidates. And if you're a seller and you're out there and you're active on LinkedIn or even just have your profile set up, like you should be getting, I mean, probably a job interview or somebody asking you every maybe 2 weeks at least. And they're hungry for sellers right now. But you also ask the question, like, why is that position open? Like who was last in this? Why did they leave? And like what's going on in the company space? So
yeah, you definitely got to do your research, and definitely a war for talent. But I was speaking with my colleague. We were talking about how we're in 2 years we might be going from the great reshuffle or resignation to the great recession. Because like a lot of companies are like not doing well either. So who knows if the pendulum will shift back to it being like a company market and they have their pick of the litter of best talent. Still, I think, the best talent, they're going to want to go to a place where they're appreciated, where they can have a well-being. And so, yeah, like you said, companies need to think about that. I want to touch on one other thing too. Because you are super consistent on LinkedIn. And I know building your personal brand, that's how I came across you. Like, I'm like, man, I like this guy's posts. He's, I like what he's talking about. Like, what tips would you give to folks that are like embarking on that journey of personal branding, being on LinkedIn? Like any like tips you would provide to those folks?
Yeah, for sure, man. I think, I mean, for me, it started out being remote, going from being in person, like no networking events in 2020. I just started asking the question, if my goals haven't changed, but the world has, like, I'm going to have to change something to get there, right? It's kind of like the what got you here won't get you there thing again. And for me, it was like your network is your net worth. So if, who is going to impact the deals that you close, the opportunities that come in front of you, and so on. I think, there's a way that everything kind of works together that way. So for me, it was like, man, like LinkedIn really started popping off in 2020. It felt like in my world. And so I was like, I got to be active on there. So I would say this for anybody looking to start, your first 6 months are pretty tough. Like, you'll get a like or two here. You'll probably have some of that imposter syndrome. You'll probably feel like people are like, oh man, is this person trying to be an influencer, this and that? Like, all those doubts are valid. I would say this though, like once you get over that hump, just keep connecting with other people. I think LinkedIn right now for free gives you like 100 new connections a week. So just go blindly connect with people and maybe take a couple of them that you're interested in, send them a DM, just be like, hey, this is my name. Yeah, this is what I like to do. Thanks for connecting. And just start there, because I think the network piece is invaluable. You can't replace the relationships it's going to create for you. And even like for me, it's been a thing where I want to look out for my family and not have to interview for a job the rest of my life. I don't want to have to put my resume into a portal and go up against who knows how many other resumes. I want to have to be referred into a great opportunity that's going to take care of my family. So for that's where it's like, for me, it's made a lot of sense.
Hey, preach. I love that. And also, I want to add on something to that too, for people who might be new to this. Like, don't be think about the value that you can add, and think about the position of the other people that you're looking to connect with. Like, likes are very valuable. A comment is very valuable to someone like you and I. Like, if you comment on my post, like, I appreciate that. And so, you don't even have to have a whole lot of followers to make an impact. Like, I think when you talk about branding, it's also about like what value, like what are you bringing to the table? Do you have insights that you can share with folks? Okay, maybe not right now, but you have you have you, and you have what you like. And if you're saying, I like Nate, or I like what Robert is doing, and I want to share what I like with them, and confirm that I like what they're doing, that's value. That, because now for me and Nate, that's confirming that we're on the right path. So then it becomes one of those things where it's like, oh, let me connect with Joe or Susan, because I like that they like me. And so that's an easy way to, like, if you can't have the content, at least get on there and engage with folks, because that can be how you're seen.
Yeah, man, I think that's a great point. I think that there has not been a bad thing from it. Now, I will say, like, there's been some awkward conversations from it. I've had to check myself, certain posts, this and that, and good and bad. Like, those have been constructive. But other than that, I mean, I wouldn't know you. I wouldn't know half the. I don't even I probably met 100 people that I've connected with. But the reality is, I think someday it's gonna come back. It's gonna come back and really benefit the people who went out and built that online network.
Absolutely. Everything. I mean, absolutely. It's just a fact, man. Well, look, the last part of the show is a game, right? And this is a game that I did with my friend Salman Mohuddin, who's doing some big stuff. And so this is a game where I want to get I'm just gonna shoot off some words, and you have to tell me the first word that comes to mind when I shoot it out to you. All right.
About to get the explicit rating on this podcast. Be careful.
Look, hey, you can say whatever you want. You can curse, it's all good, PG. This is PG-13, so we're good. All right, you ready?
Let's go.
The first word I got for you is sales.
Success.
All right, tech.
Industry.
Okay. DocuSign.
Closed.
Okay, cool. Quota.
Unattainable.
All right, that's a fact for a lot of companies. Okay, D&I.
No idea.
Okay. Career.
Journey.
I love that one. Mental health.
Balance.
Commission.
Bread.
I like that. Man, hey, this has been really fun having you on the show, Nate. And I really want to end this by just thanking you for taking the time to share your journey with me and the listeners, and your wisdom. I think you're on a great path into building really a meaningful career in sales or whatever it is that you desire to do. And I think as of now, just again following you, you are one of the leaders, of future leaders of the sales space. And so I look forward to seeing you progress and all the things that you're going to accomplish in the years to come.
Appreciate that, Robert. Hey, everybody, man, this is a gem. This dude is creating just a better world for us in tech. So give him a follow. If y'all want to find me, LinkedIn is a great place to reconnect with me. Send me a DM. Would love to talk.
Awesome. Peace.
I remember when the vision wasn't as clear. I don't think they thought that I would make it, but motherfuck they thoughts, cause I'm here. Now we here for the taking, yeah. My God.